All right, hello students. Now we're going to move on to example 2, interpreting data and writing inequality statements. So on this one, they're going to give us some kind of information here, kind of a data table here, and we're going to go ahead and answer some questions or kind of answer what's going on. It says Mary is comparing rainfall totals in May, June, and July. So these are all different rainfall totals. The data reflected in the table below. Fill in the blanks below and create an inequality statement to compare the changes in total rainfall in each month. The rightmost column. So I even tell you where it's at. So we could actually, they're nice enough, they kind of tell us we want the change in total rainfall, which of course is right here. That's what it says. They're nice enough to tell us the rightmost column, so we're talking about kind of this information here. So in part 1, it says write one inequality write one inequality to order the change in total rainfall. Well, first they want it from least to greatest. So we're looking at, remember, we're just looking at this column here. We're not worried about the rest of this. We're at just this column here. It says from least to greatest. Well, if we look at this, remember the negative number is always the smallest, negative 1.4. And of course, this is writing an inequality. This is less than, the next smallest number is 0.3. And of course, this is less than the greatest number, which is of course 0.5. So once again, we identify the information they wanted us to use, and we went ahead and ended it from least to greatest. Well, now they want us to go from greatest to least. Well, hopefully remember from last video that because we're going greatest to least, this is going to be switched around. The greatest number, of course, is going to be 0.5. And this is going to be greater than, remember this is a less than symbol in blue, this is a greater than symbol in red. This is going to be greater than the 0.3. And 0.3 is going to be greater than the negative 1.4. So once again, greatest to least, least to greatest, and of course they're switched around. Very similar to the positive and negatives. Now let's go ahead and kind of look at the next part. It says, in this case, does the greatest number indicate the greatest change in rainfall? And explain. Well, the greatest number is 0.5. Does this indicate the greatest change? Go ahead and think about that for a moment. And think about, is 0.5 the greatest change? Well, hopefully you thought about it and said, no, it's not. The greatest change is actually negative 1.4. Remember, it doesn't say the greatest value or the greatest number. It says the greatest change. This only changed by a half. This changed by 1.4. 1.4 is a greater change. It's not a bigger number or a greater number. It's a greater change in rainfall. And that's what we're talking about, change in rainfall. So we go ahead and we need to write a statement here. The answer is no. Now I want you to go ahead, I want you to fill in the rest. I want you to go ahead and write a statement about what is the biggest change. Is 0.5 the biggest change, or is negative 1.4 a bigger change? So go ahead and pause the video for a minute. Go ahead and try to just write down an explanation of why the answer would be no, kind of based on what I said and kind of based on the numbers presented. When you're done, go ahead and come back and play the video and go over a couple more examples. All right, let's go ahead and go. Welcome back. Hopefully you have a nice statement down. We'll kind of talk about that hopefully in class. But let's go ahead and move on with question 5. So here it says Mark's favorite football team lost yardage in 2 back-to-back plays. They lost 3 yards on the first play. And, they lost 1 yard on the second play. Write an inequality statement using integers to compare the following. Compare the forward progress made on each play. So go ahead and take a moment. Actually, I want you to try this on your own. Go ahead and hit pause and go ahead and write it down. And when you're done, I'll come back and I'll give you the answer. All right, so hopefully you gave this a try. So hopefully you have this is negative 3. I always like to kind of indicate what the numbers represent, and this is negative 1. So I'm going to write an inequality. You actually could write this in 2 different ways. It doesn't tell you which way either. I don't think it says go from least to greatest to least. So you could have written this in 2 ways. The first way, of course, is least to greatest. So negative 3 is less than negative 1. You also could have written it this way. Negative 1 is greater than negative 3. Either one of these answers would be correct. because it doesn't indicate which way they want us to go. So I can't see it anywhere. All right, so let's go and look at the next one. Let's kind of do the same thing. Sierra had to pay the school for 2 textbooks that she lost. One textbook cost $55, the other cost $75. Her mother wrote 2 separate checks for each expense. Write 2 inequalities that represent the change in her mother's checking account balance. Then, so we're first going to write 2 integers based on the numbers. It says then write an inequality statement that shows a relationship between the 2 numbers. So first we have to write, it says right here, write 2 integers that represent the change. So we have 2 things here. She had one cost for $55 and the other cost for $75. So first we need to write the inequalities. Actually, go ahead and pause the video. I want you to try this on your own once again, just like we did above. Come back and I'll go ahead and I'll help you out with or show you the answers. All right, so once again, hopefully you have a cost of $55 is negative 55. That's one integer. And the other integer is negative 75. So hopefully those are the 2 numbers that you came up with. Now they want us to do something else. And then it says, then write an inequality statement to show the relationship between the 2 numbers. Once again, if you haven't done this already, please go ahead and pause the video and then come back and I'll kind of write or show you what the inequality statement should be. All right, just like the one above, it doesn't give us any direction, either greatest to least or least to greatest. So you could have 2 possible answers. The first one is negative 55. Hopefully you have is greater than negative 75. Remember, losing $75 is worse than losing 55. Or you could have written it the other way. Oh, that was a bad negative. Let's fix that real quick. Or you could have written it the other way and had negative 75 is less than negative 55. All right, so there's your statements, and that's what they should look like. All right, so you should be ready to go now to move on to the assignment. So go ahead and stop the video and go ahead and get started.